So that gets us to the next question, which is popular. What do we mean by popular? Well, popular for our purposes means people, right? When we talk about the people, we're not just talking about mainstream culture. We're not just talking about subcultures. Sometimes we're talking about flash mobs and things like that, which come and go. They're very, what we call evanescent, right? They flare up for a moment and then they disappear. So it can be hard to find the people. One way to find them is to see where they congregate. Where do masses of them come together? Okay. So wherever you see masses of people organizing around a particular cultural text, we can call it popular culture. Another way is to look at where social authorities are becoming upset by what people are doing, right? So what we call moral panics are a useful way to identify a popular formation or a popular group that's coming into existence. Okay, so this is an example of a really old moral panic about Dungeons and Dragons, right? Evangelists see the game as a front for demon worship, right? The same thing's been said about Harry Potter and about other franchises in America in recent days. So wherever we see people becoming upset about a particular popular cultural form, right, this is a place where we might find some really interesting material to study. Okay, so you want to look where people congregate, and you want to look where social authorities are becoming agitated. So to kind of summarize, there are several characteristics of popular culture. For our purposes, we'll be focusing on usage, right? And for us, popular culture is very much about how people use the materials that are provided to them, right? So John Fiske, who's a famous scholar of popular culture, puts it this way: popular culture is the art of making do with what is available. So the art of making do with what is available. So for example, a critical theorist might look at Barbie and say, well, it's a mass-produced standardized image of femininity, and it's inculcating its users with this notion of what it means to be a woman, and it implies that this is the only way to be a woman, and so therefore it is an act of power. Well, maybe, right? I think, of course, there are ideologies about these ideas about feminism that are being conveyed by the shape of Barbie, by the kinds of occupations she's allowed to have. They used to have a talking Barbie, for example, which when you pulled the string said, math is hard. Right? So replicating that idea that girls are not good at math. Right? So there are these messages that Barbie conveys, but that's not all Barbie does. And what we want to look at as popular culture scholars are the ways in which people use Barbie in their everyday lives. And so, this is maybe a different image of that. Right? We see, I can't tell if this is from a film or not, if this is an actor or just a generic face. But we see, a young girl and an older man playing Barbie, and we don't know what they're doing with Barbie. They may be just playing with Barbie as it's intended to be played with. But one thing that they are doing that Mattel didn't necessarily count on is they're connecting. Okay? They're connecting across generations and across genders. And so that is a type of use that exceeds, that is beyond the bounds of what the cultural industries may have intended for Barbie. Right? They may have intended to inculcate these ideas about femininity, but what they did was provide a toy that could be used in a variety of other ways. Right? And so the ways that people use Barbie are much more interesting than the ways in which Barbie may be intended to be used. And we're going to focus more on the use in this class. We're also going to think about audiences as agents, not just dupes. We're not going to assume that they are fooled by the products of the cultural industry, that they all just swallow everything that's thrown at them. And Fiske, again, is important here. He notes that roughly 80% of products from these cultural industries are rejected by the people. Well, what that tells us is that people are actually fairly discriminating in their tastes, that they don't just take everything that they're given, but in fact, they make distinctions among the types of things they're being offered. And they have a sense of what makes a good movie and what makes a bad movie. So we make these kinds of discriminations all the time. We're interested in the ways people do that. That's one of the things we're going to be looking at. So we want to always assume audiences are social agents, that they have the skill to discriminate, to interpret, and to add value to those raw materials that the culture industry is giving them. Finally, again, this is Fiske, right? Popular culture is contradictory to its core. Okay? It's contradictory because it carries different sets of priorities and values. If much of our culture is created by these commercial industries, they have a certain agenda, right? They want to make money, and they may want to enforce certain social norms, right, to reinforce their own social authority. So there are the needs and the desires of producers and social authorities that are embedded in these materials, but then there are also the ways that users use them. So they're the needs and desires that users bring, including the need to gain meaning, to gain pleasure, to establish identity, to connect with others. So it isn't just about incorporation, but also about what we call excorporation. So incorporation would be about the ways that corporations try to fool us into going along with the status quo. Right? Coca-Cola is trying to fool us into believing it has an emotional attachment to us as consumers, and that we mean something to Coca-Cola. This is an act of culture jamming. They took a billboard from Coca-Cola with this affective message on it, love, right? And deconstructed it, right? Just by adding the word profit, right? They unmask Coca-Cola's true motives here. They don't love us. They just want us to buy their stuff. They want to make money off us. And that's what a lot of popular culture wants to do, but that's not what all popular culture wants to do. The really popular part of this cultural message here is this addition, the way it's been expropriated or excorporated by individuals and changed, altered, so that it carries a new message. Right? We're interested in the ways that the messages given to us can be re-engineered. So to summarize, culture is a process. It's not products. It's not a set of references we need to become familiar with, but it's rather these processes of meaning-making, interpretation, and pleasure that people bring to symbolic systems. Popular culture is bound up with mass culture, but it is created only when people interpret or use that culture, and that's the part that we're interested in. Because it carries different sets of agendas, if you will, because there is the corporate agenda and then there is the populist agenda involved in popular culture, it is inherently contradictory. It carries both sets of messages, and which ones become active at any particular moment is really a matter of context, and we're interested. Our focus, and we'll get to this more later in the semester when we talk about questions of social power and identity, our focus is really on the space between the social norms that are conveyed through our culture and the applications of those norms, the ways we use the culture, sometimes to go along with the norms, but at other times to undermine them. Right? So we're interested in focusing on social relations. We're interested in power relations. We're going to get to that later. But most importantly, we're interested in context-specific approaches to culture. Right? So you can't analyze a cultural object in the absence of the historical or social conditions which produced it or through which it circulates. And that's what we're going to learn in this course. So that's your basic introduction. You do have some questions here, and these are the same questions that are on the blend space. But things to think about while you're reading. Look these over, then go and do the reading. It will help you focus there.